everyone, Ace here, and today I would like to have you join me for a bit of a laugh and a read at a bit of a hit piece I have found on Forbes' website here from a game journalist called Mitch Wallace here. So, Monster Hunter World's worst offense might be its questionable treatment of animals. This guy is apparently upset that a game called Monster Hunter would have hunting in it. Well, let's get on with the article here. Despite how complicated and overwhelming Monster Hunter World can be, I've been getting more and more consumed by its expansive aims and deep leveling systems. Yeah, Monster Hunter World is actually a relatively deep game, part of the Monster Hunter franchise, I must say. That said, there's something that's been bothering me quite a bit, and strangely it has less to do with convoluted menus and more to do with the game's basic premise. Griefing, pestering, and outright destroying innocent animals, many of whom are just minding their own damn business. Well, yeah, welcome to Mother Nature. That's kind of how it works. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Excuse me, sir, you may not be aware, but this is just a video game, a game about hunting. It's in the title, actually. So why are you so surprised that the fundamental gameplay loop involves tracking down creatures, killing them, and harvesting their materials to use for weapon and armor upgrades? You know, that is actually a good question. Well, random internet person who is kindly taking the time to read this article. Yes, I'm being very kind about it, I'm sure you can tell. I'm not surprised, not in the least. What I am troubled, and it's honestly not something I thought I'd be feeling while playing through a complete grindfest like this. Though, as unexpected as the notion seems, it's there and it continues to linger, even after almost 15 hours of exploring. Only 15 hours. Now, okay, to be granted here, okay, so a little bit of an honest note here. I personally haven't actually had the chance to play Monster Hunter World yet because I don't have an Xbox One or a PS4. I have a PC and I have a Nintendo Switch. So I've, of course, the only recent Monster Hunter game I've been playing is Monster Hunter XX, which I've imported from Japan. So I can't completely vouch for Monster Hunter World specifically, but I've been playing the series since Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, so I know how it is. And I know for a fact that the game actually lasts a lot longer than 15 hours. Basically, it's what I would call a 1,000-hour franchise. You should expect to spend about that much playing the game. And it's just a really, really long series of games. So let's just get out of the way. 15 hours on this is absolutely nothing. But let's continue on. I just got done with some general hunting, so let me try and paint a riveting picture for you. As is the case when accepting many of the rudimentary quests earlier on in World's extensive RPG experience, I once again get whisked away to an open environment called the Ancient Forest. This steamy jungle is your basic primeval biome, replete with oversized hovering insects, raging waterfalls, dense vine canopies, and even splendid carnivorous plant lookalikes. There's monkey cups that boast an uncanny Nepenthenses and Perilia resemblance. That's my nerdy botanist side sneaking out. Okay, so how... if it sounds like this guy is trying to sound a bit smarter than he actually is in this particular article, this is a pretty good example of it, I would argue. Trying to use Latin words here to try to make yourself sound smarter is pretty old hat. In fact, to think back to it, I'm pretty sure that Chaucer was making fun of this in the Canterbury Tales. If I remember correctly, Summoner, one of the characters that he was really, really uncharitable to, one of his things was he would use Latin in the book to make it sound a lot smarter than he actually is. So, as old hat as this is essentially stuff that people have been making fun of since the medieval times. Just let that thought sink in here. The fact that this guy's article is so unoriginal and his thought processes are so unoriginal that he's doing stuff that people have been making fun of since the medieval times. But let's carry on. It all looks seriously great, moody, palpable, and atmospheric. Though I'm not here to sightsee. I'm here to hit something repeatedly with my hammer until it stops moving. Unfortunately. Okay, so apparently, what is it with this guy's writing here? I mean, unfortunately is not an entire sentence. Why would you do that? Oh dear. Okay, so let's move on from that. So I start to gather organic clues from my surroundings. Anything to help me locate my precious bounty. A track here, a skid mark there, some mucus over there, and before I know it, I'm hot on the trail of a great Jagras, Monster Hunter's fictionalized version of Megafauna iguana. Sure, it likes to swallow other animals whole with its expandable, snake-like orifice. But when I finally encounter the massive reptile, it's not attacking anything, let alone me. I watch it vocalize for no real reason, almost like a person talking to himself as they do chores around the house. It lumbers to and fro through the lush vegetation, stepping across streams and doing whatever giant Jagras do with their natural free time. So in response, I walk up to this impressive creature and nonchalantly begin smashing it in the face. Yeah, well, that is, okay, so yeah, that's kind of, again, welcome to Mother Nature. That's kind of how, I mean, if you're talking about how animals in the actual wildlife, and I know he's doing the whole segue, he's doing the whole trying to talk about it in comparison to real life thing, but if you're going to talk about real life, well, in real life, in the wild, animals do tend to sneak up on their prey. They don't just attack. They don't go after prey that's directly attacking them in the wildlife, just so you know. Mother Nature is typically very, very cruel and harsh, and has, well, so your arguments here completely fall flat when you consider that this is actually the norm rather than the exception. But let's carry on. Of course, once the big lizard deems me a threat, you know, from the incessant face bashing, it predictably fights back, if only to protect itself from the insane hairless ape that suddenly strolled into its life. Unannounced and uninvited. Why did he have this be another sentence? This should have been a comma. What are you doing? This is a professional writer. What are you doing? There's a short struggle, though in a matter of minutes it's all over. I'm digging into the green scales with my trusty gutting knife, pulling out what I'll need to add more ostentatious spikes to my armor. Ah, the spoils of the hunt. And to think that silly Jagras woke up this morning without a clue as to what was coming his way. Not that mega iguanas think about anything, I suppose. Wow, he actually used a comma where it belongs. Well, kind of, but anyways, you know, maybe what this guy should try to do is, what he should do is go up to a grizzly bear and just explain to them how their hunting is wrong in the wildlife and how they should try to hunt stuff that is already aware to them. No, please do it, dude. It would do all of us a favor, I'm sure. But let's carry on. But I'm not done, not by a long shot. Oh, really? It looks to me like the article's about halfway over. But I still need to obliterate something called a Kulu-ya-ku, a rather intelligent avian lifeform that has developed the ability to utilize tools. It looks like a cross between an ancient South American terror bird and one of the Jurassic Park's agile velociraptors. Honestly, I just want to admire it from afar, maybe take a photo or two, and marvel at the existence of this incredible product of natural selection. Natural selection in this fictional video game that is designed more by artists than by, well, anything that Darwin would consider natural selection. Some people have already made that particular point, that this guy is just completely talking out of his backside, but to be fair, it is something I have to address too. That's not how natural selection works. In fact, if you actually look at it, Monster Hunter has got a bit of a reputation for being one of the most unrealistic video games of all time. Now, there's nothing, of course, wrong with that. I do like Monster Hunter. I can't say I'm the hugest fan, although I have bought the Nintendo Switch version, which means I had to import that from Japan. But the fact still remains, I do really like the Monster Hunter series. So, but I will openly admit that, yeah, it's not a particularly realistic game. But anyways, let's carry on. But that kind of Pokemon Snap or Beyond Good and Evil detachment just won't do here. You forgot Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. I could do that as well. And those are actually based off of actual historical dinosaurs, so that is actual natural selection. But do carry on. So I initiate another unprovoked conflict. The bird grabs a rock and makes a futile attempt at defense. But I'm just too strong at this point. So in almost no time, it's limping, crying, then ultimately fleeing. Wait, why did he write it this way? It should have been crying, comma, then ultimately, comma, fleeing. Sorry. And to its horror, I'm following close behind. That's actually the most heart-wrenching part, trailing an injured monster as it tries to run away after it realizes that it's going to die, and at the hands of some alien intruder. It happens in the most agonizing fashion, as if to drive home the unsaid point that most of these encounters shouldn't even be happening in the first place, that these animals aren't craving bloody battles and violent brawls. Actually, again, this is pretty much the modus operandi of Mother Nature. Seriously, go watch Animal Planet. Go see how leopards and cheetahs and whatnot hunt their prey. They do it unprovoked for a reason. To be truthful, there are a few monsters that do seem to seek out this kind of interaction, like the aggressive and very much carnivorous Anyan. I'm not going to pronounce that name, I'm sorry. It's in these moments that fighting seems slightly more appropriate, justified even. In most cases, or in most others, it doesn't. There's simply a group of evil humans expending upon a creature that is now having to fight for its life, and that development doesn't exactly feel acceptable to me, even though it's, by game standards, the right thing to do. Well, it's also how, if you're going to talk about this, yeah, you should probably educate yourself about how the world works, Mr. Mitch Wallace, because again, if you're going to compare this to real life and whatnot, or try to do that, this is how Mother Nature works, so get used to it, Mr. Wallace. How so? Because I have a reward to reap from this encounter? And this isn't a capture quest. Well, you can still capture monsters if you decide to on a hunt quest. You can still capture them. In fact, it's actually encouraged in the games, typically, because you get rewarded with more stuff. Now, it's technically a little bit more difficult to do so, because you have to know when the monster is limping away and all that. But that's a pretty easy clue. Once you know what you're doing there, and you get enough trank bombs, and you get a trap set up, it's pretty easy to capture monsters, in my opinion. And in fact, I would argue it's in some ways even easier because it saves you some time. And it prevents you from potentially getting hit a few more times, causing you to faint and potentially even lose the quest. So you can do it, guy. It's possible, Mr. Wallace. And in fact, the game does encourage it, Mr. Wallace, because it even gives you more rewards to do so. What are you doing? It's an investigation, which demands that I slay these beasts because monster populations are on the rise and researchers always need more specimens for their studies. I guess you could argue that I might be responsibly culling giant jaguar numbers, kind of like how some U.S. states will declare open season on resident deer to prevent them from draining resources and starving to death. And also, of course, potentially getting people injured because of car accidents and things like that are a very real danger to both the deer and to people as well. But since you want to talk about real-life politics, I'm going to be very simple here. Getting shot is probably going to be a better way to go than starving to death, I would say. So if you really so I'm not going to be charitable to you if you keep trying to compare this to whole real life and all that. And I will, of course, sink to that low, of course, and beat you at your own game at this. But anyways. But not all of World's missions even fall into this vaguely possible category. Sometimes monsters are just in the way of human endeavors. Other times there's literally no reason to kill them, other than to steal their pelts, beaks, and bones. The pangolin scales, rhino horns, and elephant tusks of gaming. Okay, you also forgot, I'm pretty sure you also forgot buffalo tongues, but we're going to leave that there. Having expounded on, oh, and you also forgot, by the way, whale blubber. You should probably consider adding a few more to that list there. Having expounded on all that, I should clarify that I'm not over here hoping that PETA suddenly starts investigating Capcom. It's not that at all. Even though even though PETA have lambasted games for far less than this. Remember when Battlefield 3, for instance, got scolded by PETA for having a QTE where you had to kill a rat or else the rat would get you killed early on in the game? I remember that very specifically, that PETA sunk to that low. But this guy... But this guy thinks nothing, that PETA's not going to do anything about this if they happen to see his article. Monster Hunter World is doing what it does best, and doing it extremely well, I might add. It's an experience about venturing into the extreme territories, taking down enormous beasts, and becoming more statistically advanced with each passing expedition. There's very little in the way of morality or challenging choices, and that's fine. Well, Okay, fair enough. That is actually a legitimate, reasonable point. This game does not actually decide to go into the politics of it. So, of course, that begs the question, why are you getting into the politics of it when the game isn't really asking for it? Even so, while the inherent gameplay loop is enormously satisfying, I can't help but feel bad about what I'm doing on a conservation level, even if it's totally fictional. I've ended countless digital creatures through my gaming years. Those poor, poor Goombas. Oh, God. Oh, seriously? So I'm not sure why World seems different. I suppose there's a realness to monsters and behaviors that just gets to me. Okay. Fair enough. Okay, so finally there is actually something fair I can say about this. I was originally surprised when I first played Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate back in the day when I realized that the monsters would actually do what I refer to as death dance when they're on the dying end there. And okay, fair enough. I was legitimately surprised. I wouldn't say I was offended or triggered anyways. I was more like, wow, this game actually decided to actually wow, this game actually has a little bit of weight to it. That's awesome. I love this game. I want to play more of it. And yeah, that was pretty much my overall look at that when I found that bit. So I've kind of gotten accustomed to it. But yeah, fair enough. That is actually a fair enough point, I guess. But the fact that this guy is trying to do a hit piece over that's not fair. But this is where this article really annoys me, is the end here. I won't stop playing Monster Hunter World. I'm certainly not telling anyone else to stop. It's a fun game. I'm looking forward to fully exploring everything it has to offer. All I'm getting at is this. A discussion around the should we of video games can sometimes be interesting. Well, you've kind of destroyed your own argument here by saying you're not going to stop and you're not telling anyone else to stop, but you're asking, should we be doing this in this game? So you've kind of destroyed your own argument of the whole should we bit there, but this is what really, later on here, this is what really annoys me, because he, of course, decides to keep comparing this to real life. If we're lucky, said question can spill into the real world, where we have very real problems surrounding habitat loss, endangered species, and at a basic decency level, animal cruelty. I know it's just a game. I'm sure I'll get some blowback for regarding this article's subject matter. But between this and the Shadow of Colossus remake, I've been spending a good deal of time thinking. Oh, really? uh, uh, oh dear. About what video game... Thinking about what video games... You needed to have a comma there again, guy. About what video games teach us. About what they teach our kids. Oh, won't someone please think of the children? About the consideration we award living things on this planet that aren't, for lack of better term, us. Well, okay. So, since you want to talk about animal cruelty, and you know, the thing is, in my experience, some of the people that are real animal lovers, in my personal experience, happen to actually be people that I know that happen to be hunting. Now, granted, that is just from my personal experience. That might not be the statistical reality. I've not looked at the statistical reality, but I can say for certain that just because you're hunting doesn't mean that you hate animals. Let's be very clear about that. It doesn't even mean that you hate being in the wilderness. I don't necessarily hate being outdoors. In fact, I do a bit of hunting myself, actually. But at the end of the day, the thing is, I'm a realist when it comes to when it comes to talking about the wild. I'm not this idealist that this guy clearly is. I understand how it works. So, this article is just... Wow. This article is actually, I would argue, almost insulting to my intelligence. Just how unoriginal and uninspired this guy's article actually is. It's quite impressive. I mean, the fact that he's literally doing stuff to make himself sound smart from that people have been mocking since the days of Chaucer really shows this. But yeah, this has been Ace. Hope to see... Well, actually, you know what? Before I go, I'll answer his question about what they teach our kids. Well, hopefully, I'll let you in on a little secret, Mr. Wallace. Hopefully, by the time my son gets up to be 13 years old, which is what this game's rated for, PEGI 13, or it's rated T for teen, right? So 13 and up. By the time my son gets to be 13 years old, I'll tell you that he won't have much to learn from this because I will have, by that time, taught him how to hunt. Thank you very much. And taught him about Mother Nature and how to respect it properly. So yes, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.